welcome to my monthly Buddhist podcast, What's Your Favourite Cake? A podcast about how I use the daily practice of Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism in my life. This is my journey and how I use my Buddhist practice to enhance my life, but with the hope that I can inspire you on your journey too. What's Your Favourite Cake is available on Spotify as well as my YouTube channel, which is also where you'll find videos with audio that we can all chant along to, as well as Buddhist study videos with my take on various Goshos, as well as basics of Buddhism topics too. Before we start, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the people supporting me through my Nigel the Buddha Patreon account, because none of my content would be possible without you. Hi Buddhas! Hope you're all doing very, very well. No, I hope you're doing brilliantly. Thank you so much for listening, and a special thank you if you listened to the previous episodes that I've done. I really hope you have been inspired in some way. If you've not heard them yet, then they're available both on Spotify and YouTube. Audio only on Spotify, and on my YouTube channel it's mostly audio, but with a few video snippets here and there. So, welcome to this, the fourth episode of my world famous podcast, What's Your Favourite Cake? I say world famous. That might be a very slight exaggeration. Maybe what I should have said was, welcome to this, the fourth episode of my 2 or 3 people in a village might have heard of it podcast. Anyway, this one is called And His Words Were These. I'll explain that title in a bit, but it's a significant one for me. As I was writing this, I realised just how much I had to say, or maybe just how much I ramble on. So rather than this be a 24-hour long podcast-a-thon, I thought it's maybe better to make it a 2-parter. So look out for part 2 next month. So, what am I banging on about in this one? Well, I've been asked a few times how I met the practice, why I started to chant, who introduced me, how long have I been practicing, etc, etc. So I thought I'd respond to all of the questions in a podcast. I hope that's okay. I don't know about you, but I always want to hear other people's experiences. They often inspire me, especially if I can relate to their struggles. So I really hope that by me giving my experience here, it will inspire at least some of you. I'll do that in a sec because I've just realised I haven't made myself a cuppa, and as we all know, life without a cuppa is just not bearable and impossible to podcast without. That's better. I feel more human now. Okay, so to explain this episode title, And His Words Were These. Well, my favourite song of all time is by the British singer-songwriter Howard Jones, and the song is called Hide and Seek. I was 13 when it was released in the UK, way back in 1984, but it made quite the impression on me. First time I heard it, I thought, wow, this is such a powerful song. Such amazingly dramatic music, really, really incredible, powerful lyrics, I thought. Anyway, the lyrics to this song immediately before the first chorus are, And His Words Were These. And I thought, well, that's perfect to use as the title of this podcast. Because, well, I was already quite the Howard Jones fan by then. I was 12 years old when I saw him on TV for the first time, and I can honestly say he's been the most amazingly positive influence on me, which I'm sad to say was oh so lacking in my home life. His lyrics have always been philosophical, uplifting, and definitely encouraging, especially whenever the chips have been down for me. I mean, if you've listened to my previous podcasts, you'll know I struggled a huge amount all throughout my life, and none more so than when I was in my teens. It's such a tricky time, isn't it, in life? It's really hard. So having such a positive influence at the time for me was amazing. And actually, as it turned out, having Howard in my life, so to speak, was, well, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say it was life-changing. But I'll come to that in a bit. Fast forward to 2005, I was having another terrible time with my mental health, one of many in my life. But this one was so bad it resulted in an overnight stay in hospital and then 2 weeks in a mental health hospital. I'd sort of tried to take my own life, but not really. I never actually wanted to die. It was more a cry for help. It was a statement because I didn't think anyone was really taking me seriously. It was like me saying, this is how bad things are in my head. Please take me seriously. Please help me. Because I used to get so frustrated with not being able to impart my feelings, not feeling able to express them in a way that people around me could see how bad things were in my head. So no wonder people weren't taking me seriously, or so I thought. But in reality, is it up to anyone else to tell me when I'm feeling so bad? No, of course not. That's clearly up to me. However, I found it really hard to tell people how much I'm struggling. Thankfully, I don't get so frustrated with myself these days, I'm happy to say. It really helps that Alice, my wife, is so supportive. It really helps that she's so understanding. And she really is so good at knowing the signs, often before I do. So we don't go down that road of self-destruction, if you like. And I don't have to make a big statement to let her know how much I'm suffering. Of course, we chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo to overcome our suffering, don't we? But not only to overcome them, but actually to turn it into a source of good. When we transform our negatives, our poison, into positives, our medicine, we do our human revolution, don't we? As Sensei says. Human revolution means turning our lives in a positive direction, from unhappiness to happiness. It is the transformation of the tendency to allow ourselves to be swept along by force of habit or to feel ourselves at the mercy of the whims of destiny. The incredible power to do this already exists inside us. So back to 2005, and it was a month or two after I came out of the hospital. I was working nights back then in a food distribution company, and I'd spent another night at work crying. I really hadn't recovered. I had so much time off work sick, and when I was there, I was next to useless. I was probably less helpful than a chocolate fire guard. Joking aside, I was probably more of a burden on my colleagues than a help, I would say. On this particular night, my supervisor approached me and said, "Nigel, you just can't go on like this. You need help. Let's have a chat." So compassionate. I was blown away. I'm so grateful to him. We talked about what help I could get. The obvious answer was to talk to my doctor, but I tried that so many times. I then almost randomly mentioned one of our colleagues, who is Muslim. I said, "I really wish I was more like Muhammad. He's so awesome. Whatever we're up against, however rude or abrupt people are with him, he's always so calm and respectful in his responses. He's amazing." So then my supervisor said, "Well, have you tried religion then?" And I replied, "Well, yes, many times, but I don't believe in God, so it's not for me." How naive was that comment? And then he replied with quite possibly the single most important thing anyone has ever said to me. He said, "Well, what about Buddhism? I don't think they have any gods." So that night on my break, I searched the internet, which, let's not forget, was 2005. It was a very, very limited search. And then on my days off, I went to my local library to find books on Buddhism. There wasn't enough information on the internet, or none that I can find anyway. I'm sounding really old, aren't I? But I'm pleased to say times have changed. Anyway, I learnt about Shakyamuni Buddha and read about concepts like the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, and I also read books on how to meditate. Now, trying to meditate when you've got ADHD, well, that's quite a challenge, I can tell you. I mean, I didn't know back then, but hey, I still had ADHD, didn't I? But even though meditation was really quite difficult for me, I persisted. Every day I would sit still, try to sit still. I would try to clear my mind, try to concentrate on my breathing, which started from my stomach, released it through my breath when I breathed out, etc., etc. But is this it? I thought, is this Buddhism? I wasn't so sure. Where's the action? Where's the action to be a Buddhist? If I just meditated, does that make me a Buddhist? If I just read these books, these very thin books on Buddhism, I hasten to add, does that make me a Buddhist? Surely there's more to Buddhism than just this, I thought. That was around September of 2005, and in late October, Howard Jones released an album called Revolution of the Heart. Actually, this isn't related to my story, but there's a song on that album called Respected. I wonder if any of you have heard of it. Here in the UK, it gets sung quite a bit at meetings actually. Maybe it does at yours too. But check it out, I think you might recognise it. It's called Respected by Howard Jones, and it's on the album Revolution of the Heart. So I knew that Howard had been a Buddhist for a while, but that's all I knew. In fact, a year or two previously, I saw on his website there was a picture of him chanting, but I just dismissed it thinking, oh dear, Howard's gone mad. But of course, I just started looking into Buddhism, so I no longer thought that. So I took the opportunity to email him from his website. I told him how much I liked his new album, and I also mentioned that I have found Buddhism. And I was really surprised when I got a reply from him. Part of his reply was encouraging me to read the first book on Buddhism he ever read, which was called, and I'm sure you've heard of this, The Buddha in Daily Life. It's a book by a person called Richard Corsten, who at the time was the SGI-UK leader. I had no idea at the time that sending an email, not expecting a response, just wanting to connect with the person who has had such a positive effect on my life. No idea at all that it would be the turning point of my life, the turning point that I was so desperately looking for. Okay, so let's leave it there for this part. Next month, I talk about my first meeting and an embarrassing moment when I started to chant there. Have a great month. Take care of yourselves. You have been listening to What's Your Favourite Cake, a monthly podcast about how I use Buddhism in my life. Come chant with me on my YouTube channel when I go live, and check out my Inspirational Quote video shorts too. Thank you so much for your support.